The horsemen arrived at Fort Bridger, Wyoming Territory, just as the afternoon sun began its descent toward the distant mountains, bringing with him a past so tangled it would take more than miles to escape. Marcus Quinn had ridden hard from Kansas, where 3 months ago he had made a mistake that still haunted his every waking moment, a choice born of desperation and grief that had cost him everything he valued, including his reputation and very nearly his soul. The year was 1878, and the Western Territories still carried the promise of redemption for men willing to ride far enough from their mistakes, though Marcus had begun to doubt whether any distance could truly be far enough. His horse, a sturdy roan gelding named Rusty, moved with the tired gait of an animal that had covered too many miles too quickly. The main street of Fort Bridger stretched before them, a collection of weathered buildings that spoke of hard winters and harder lives. The trading post dominated one corner, its false front painted white though the paint had begun to peel. Across from it stood a mercantile, a saloon with doors that swung lazily in the spring breeze, and a handful of other establishments that served the needs of trappers, ranchers, and travelers passing through on their way to somewhere else. Marcus dismounted outside the livery stable, his legs stiff from days in the saddle. The blacksmith, a barrel-chested man with arms like tree trunks, looked him over with the practiced eye of someone who had seen every type of drifter the West could produce. "Need a stall for your horse," Marcus said, his voice hoarse from disuse. "And maybe you can point me toward work." The blacksmith wiped his hands on his leather apron. "Work depends on what you can do. You handy with tools?" "I can work cattle, break horses, do carpentry if needed." "Whatever pays honest wages." The word honest felt strange on his tongue, weighted with irony given what he had left behind in Kansas. 3 months ago he had been part of a gang that robbed a bank in Dodge City, though in his defense, he had not known that was the plan when he rode in with them. He had fallen in with bad companions after his brother died, men who seemed to understand his rage and grief, who offered him whiskey and easy friendship when he needed both desperately. By the time he understood their true nature, bullets were flying and a bank clerk lay bleeding on the floor. Marcus had not fired a shot, had in fact tried to stop it, but the law rarely concerned itself with such distinctions. He had fled westward with a price on his head and guilt eating at his insides like acid. "Widow Ortega might need help," the blacksmith said, interrupting Marcus's dark thoughts. "Her husband died last winter. She has been trying to keep their place running on her own, but it is too much for one person. The ranch is about 5 miles northwest of town. You will see the marker where the road forks." Marcus nodded his thanks and led Rusty into the stable. He removed the saddle himself, brushing down the gelding with careful strokes while the horse munched contentedly on fresh hay. The simple task brought him a measure of peace. There was honesty in caring for an animal, a straightforwardness he craved after months of moral ambiguity. He spent the night in the stable loft, unable to afford a hotel room with his meager remaining funds. Sleep came fitfully, interrupted by dreams of his brother's funeral and the look on that bank clerk's face as blood spread across his white shirt. When dawn broke, Marcus rose and splashed water from the trough on his face, then headed to the mercantile for supplies. The woman behind the counter was elderly, with sharp eyes that seemed to catalog his every feature. "You are new," she observed. "Just arrived yesterday." "I heard Widow Ortega might need help." The woman's expression softened slightly. "Olivia could use a hand, that is true. She has been struggling since Thomas passed. Hart gave out during a blizzard. By the time anyone could reach them, he was already gone." Marcus purchased coffee, jerky, and a few other necessities with precious coins from his dwindling stake. As he left the mercantile, he noticed a wanted poster on the door. His own face stared back at him, rendered in crude lines but recognizable enough to make his blood run cold. The reward was $500. He pulled his hat lower and walked quickly to where Rusty waited. The ride to the Ortega ranch took him through rolling grassland, punctuated by rocky outcroppings. Spring wildflowers dotted the landscape in splashes of yellow and purple. It was beautiful country, the kind of place a man could put down roots if he were not running from the law. The thought brought a familiar ache to his chest. The ranch house came into view just before noon. It was a modest structure built from logs, with a barn and several outbuildings arranged in a practical layout. Smoke rose from the chimney, and as Marcus approached, he could see horses in a corral and cattle grazing in the near distance. Someone had been working to keep the place going, though he could see signs of neglect in the sagging fence line and the barn door that hung crooked on its hinges. He dismounted and tied Rusty to the porch rail, then knocked on the door. No response came. He knocked again, louder this time, and called out, "Hello, Mrs. Ortega," still nothing. He walked around the side of the house, following the sound of something rhythmic and metallic. In a small lean-to attached to the back of the house, he found her. Olivia Ortega stood at an ironing board, her back to him, pressing wrinkles from a man's shirt with steady, methodical strokes. The iron was the old-fashioned kind that heated on the stove, and she worked with the quiet efficiency of someone performing a familiar ritual. Steam rose from the dampened fabric as she moved the iron back and forth. Her dark hair pulled back in a simple bun, her dress plain but clean. Something about the scene struck him with unexpected force. This woman alone in the wilderness performing such a domestic task, maintaining order and normalcy in the face of loss. He cleared his throat gently, not wanting to startle her. She turned, the iron still in her hand, and he got his first clear look at her face. She was younger than he had expected, perhaps 24 or 25, with strong features and eyes that held both sorrow and determination. Those eyes swept over him with caution, taking in his dusty clothes and trail-worn appearance. "Can I help you?" Her voice was steady despite the circumstances of a strange man appearing at her home. "My name is Marcus Quinn. I just arrived in Fort Bridger. The blacksmith in town mentioned you might need help around your ranch. I am looking for work." She set the iron on the stove to reheat, studying him with those dark eyes. "What kind of work can you do?" "I grew up on a ranch in Missouri. I can handle cattle, mend fences, work with horses. I know carpentry and basic smithing. Whatever needs doing, I will learn if I do not already know how." Olivia was quiet for a moment, weighing his words against whatever standards she held. Finally, she nodded. "I cannot pay much. Room and board plus a small wage. The bunkhouse has not been used since Thomas died, but it should be livable." "That would be fine, madam. Do not call me madam. It makes me feel old. Olivia will do." She paused, then added, "When can you start?" "Right now, if you need me to." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "The north fence line has been down for 2 weeks. Cattle keep wandering toward the Taylor property. If you could start there, I would be grateful." Marcus touched the brim of his hat. "I will get my horse settled and start this afternoon." He found the bunkhouse as promised, a simple structure with 4 bunks and a small stove. It was dusty but intact. He swept it out quickly, put his bedroll on one of the bunks, then changed into work clothes and headed out to survey the fence line. The damage was extensive, the result of winter weather and neglect. It would take several days to repair properly, but he had the time and the need to prove himself useful. He worked until darkness made it impossible to see, then returned to the bunkhouse bone weary but satisfied with his progress. His hands had blisters forming from the unfamiliar work after weeks of holding nothing but reins. But the physical labor felt like penance, a way to work out the guilt that rode him like a second shadow. The next morning he woke before dawn and returned to the fence. By mid-morning he had made significant progress when he heard a horse approaching. Olivia rode up on a paint mare, a canteen in her hand. "You have been out here since first light," she observed, handing him the water. "Light is when I can work," he replied, drinking deeply. The water was cold and tasted faintly of minerals. She dismounted and walked along the fence line, examining his work with a critical eye. "You know what you are doing. My father taught me well before he died. What brought you to Wyoming?" The question was casual, but he sensed real curiosity behind it. Marcus chose his words carefully. "I needed a fresh start. Sometimes a man makes mistakes he cannot undo, only try to move forward from." Olivia's expression shifted, showing something like understanding. "That is a truth I know well. After Thomas died, everyone expected me to sell this place and move back to town, maybe find work as a seamstress or teacher. But he loved this land, and I will not let it go without a fight." "How long were you married?" 3 years. "We met in Santa Fe when I was 18. He was there buying cattle. My father thought I was too young, but Thomas was patient and kind, and eventually father gave his blessing." She looked out across the grassland, her eyes distant. "We had plans. We were going to build a bigger house, run more cattle. Then winter came and his heart gave out and all those plans died with him." The raw honesty in her words matched something in Marcus's own heart. "I am sorry for your loss. We all carry losses," she said simply. "The question is what we do with them." She rode back to the house, leaving Marcus to his work and his thoughts. Over the following days, a routine established itself. He would rise early and work on whatever task needed attention: fence repairs, mucking out stalls, checking on the cattle. Olivia ran the household and managed the business side of the ranch, riding into town twice a week to handle accounts and purchase supplies. In the evenings they would sometimes sit on the porch, talking quietly about ordinary things: the weather, the cattle, plans for spring planting. Marcus found himself looking forward to these conversations more than he cared to admit. Olivia had a sharp mind and a quiet strength that drew him like a magnet. She spoke little of her grief, but it was there in small moments, the way she would pause sometimes and look at nothing, or how she still set 2 plates for dinner before catching herself. One evening about 2 weeks after his arrival, they sat on the porch watching the sun set in a blaze of orange and gold. Olivia had brought out coffee and they drank it in companionable silence until she spoke. "You carry sadness with you," she observed. "I recognize it because I carry my own." Marcus stared into his cup. "I lost my brother 6 months ago. He was shot trying to break up a fight in a saloon in Wichita, died in my arms. I was not ready for that loss. Is anyone ever ready? No, I suppose not, but it changed me. I made bad choices afterward, fell in with bad people. I am trying to find my way back to who I was before." She was quiet for a long moment. "We cannot go back, Marcus. We can only go forward. The question is what kind of people we choose to be moving forward." Her words struck deep. That night he lay awake in the bunkhouse, staring at the ceiling and thinking about redemption. Could a man truly change? Could he outrun his past by becoming someone different? He wanted to believe it was possible, wanted it with a fierce intensity that surprised him. The next morning brought visitors. Marcus was working in the barn when he heard horses. He looked out to see 3 men riding into the yard. Something about them set his instincts on edge, the way they sat their horses with casual arrogance, the way they spread out as they approached the house. He walked quickly toward them, arriving just as Olivia stepped onto the porch. The lead rider was a heavy-set man with a thick mustache and cold eyes. Marcus recognized the type instantly, a man who took what he wanted and justified it afterward. "Mrs. Ortega," the man said, touching his hat brim in a gesture of false courtesy. "I am Samuel Granger. I own the property adjacent to yours to the east." "I know who you are," Olivia replied, her voice cool. "What do you want?" "I have come with an offer to purchase your ranch. I will give you a fair price, enough to set yourself up comfortably in town." "The ranch is not for sale." Granger's smile did not reach his eyes. "Now, Mrs. Ortega, let us be reasonable. This is no place for a woman alone. The work is too hard, too dangerous. Let me take this burden off your hands." I said no. The man's expression hardened. "You are making a mistake. This land should be part of a larger operation, not wasted on a widow playing at ranching." Marcus stepped forward, positioning himself at the foot of the porch steps. The lady said no. "I think it is time for you gentlemen to leave." Granger's attention swung to him, appraising and dismissive at once. "Who are you?" "I work here. And you are trespassing." "Is that so?" Granger's hand rested casually on his thigh near his gun. "Maybe you should mind your own business, Drifter." "The ranch is my business now." Marcus kept his voice level, but his muscles tensed, ready for trouble. For a long moment the tension hung thick in the air. Then Granger smiled coldly. "We will be going. But think about my offer, Mrs. Ortega. This country can be dangerous. Accidents happen." They rode out at a leisurely pace, making it clear they were leaving by choice, not because they had been driven off. Marcus watched until they disappeared from sight, then turned to find Olivia standing rigid, her hands clenched at her sides. "That man has been trying to buy my land since Thomas died," she said, her voice tight with anger. "He wants to control this whole valley. I am the only holdout." "Has he made threats before?" "Not directly. But 2 months ago my barn caught fire. No explanation. Last month someone drove off half my cattle. I found them 3 days later on Granger's land. He claimed they wandered there, that his men thought they were strays." Marcus felt cold anger settle in his gut. "You should tell the sheriff." "The sheriff is Granger's brother-in-law." "I am alone in this, Marcus. The neighbors are either too afraid of Granger or too eager to curry his favor. Until you arrived, I had no one." The trust implicit in those words touched something deep in his chest. Here was someone who needed him, who depended on his strength and his presence. It was a responsibility he had not sought but found himself unwilling to abandon. "You are not alone now," he said quietly. Their eyes met and held. Something passed between them, an understanding that went beyond words. Olivia nodded once, then went back inside, but Marcus stood in the yard for a long time, watching the horizon and thinking about what he had just committed himself to. The days that followed passed without incident, but Marcus remained vigilant. He slept lightly, waking at every sound. He made sure to vary his routine so anyone watching would have trouble predicting his movements. He checked the barn and outbuildings multiple times each day, looking for signs of tampering. Olivia noticed his caution but said nothing, though he often caught her watching him with an expression he could not quite read. They continued their evening talks, but now there was an added dimension, an awareness of each other that had not been there before. Marcus found himself noticing small things, the way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear when she was thinking, the sound of her laughter when he said something amusing, the grace with which she moved. He was falling for her. The realization came one evening as he watched her tend her garden, her hands gentle with the young plants. The thought terrified him. What right did he have to care for someone when he was living a lie, when men might come looking for him at any time? If they found him here, they would find her too, and she would learn the truth about who he really was. That night he lay awake wrestling with his conscience. The honorable thing would be to leave, to take his trouble elsewhere before it could splash onto her. But the thought of riding away, of never seeing her again, was physically painful. 3 weeks after the confrontation with Granger, Olivia asked Marcus to ride into town with her for supplies. They took the wagon, setting out early in the morning while dew still silvered the grass. The ride took about an hour, and they talked easily about ranch matters, plans for moving the cattle to summer pasture, whether to buy a new bull or use the one from the Taylor ranch. Fort Bridger was busier than usual, with trappers come down from the mountains to trade their winter take. The main street bustled with activity. Marcus pulled the wagon up outside the mercantile and helped Olivia down, his hands lingering at her waist perhaps a moment longer than necessary. Her eyes met his, and he saw color rise in her cheeks before she looked away. They were loading supplies into the wagon when trouble arrived in the form of 3 men on horseback. Marcus recognized them instantly, members of the gang he had ridden with in Kansas. His blood turned to ice. The leader was Jack Moreland, a hard-eyed man with a scar across his left cheek. He reined in directly in front of Marcus, a smile spreading across his face that held no warmth. "Well, look who it is. Marcus Quinn, the man who ran out on his brothers." Marcus positioned himself between Moreland and Olivia. "I have no business with you. That is where you are wrong. You see, after you ran, the law caught up with us. 2 of our boys are dead, and another is sitting in jail waiting to hang, all because you were not there to cover our backs. I told you I wanted no part of robbing that bank, and yet you took your share of the money. I never touched a dime. I left it all in the hotel room." Moreland's expression hardened. "You owe us, Quinn. You owe us blood or money, your choice." People on the street had stopped to watch. Marcus was acutely aware of Olivia behind him, of the gun on his hip that he had not drawn in months, of the wanted poster that still hung on the mercantile door. "I owe you nothing," he said quietly. "What happened in Dodge City was not my doing. You saying we are liars." One of the other men spoke up, his hand dropping to his gun. The tension ratcheted up another notch. Marcus prepared himself for violence, calculating angles and distances. Then a new voice cut through the charged air. "That is enough." The sheriff stepped forward, a tall man with gray in his beard and a badge on his chest. Marcus's heart sank. This was Granger's brother-in-law, unlikely to be sympathetic, but the sheriff surprised him. "I do not know what grudge you men think you have, but you will not settle it in my street. Move along or spend the night in my jail." Moreland stared at Marcus for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "We will be seeing you again, Quinn. Count on it." He wheeled his horse and rode out, his companions following. The sheriff turned to Marcus. "You make a habit of attracting trouble." "No, sir. That was old business I hoped I had left behind." The sheriff studied him, then glanced at Olivia. "Mrs. Ortega, is this man working for you?" "He is, Sheriff. He has been a great help to me." "Then I suggest you both finish your business and head home." "And you," he fixed Marcus with a hard stare, "stay out of trouble in my town." They finished loading the wagon in silence. Marcus could feel Olivia's questions, but she waited until they were on the road back to the ranch before speaking. "Who were those men?" Marcus gripped the reins tightly. This was the moment he had been dreading. He could lie, but she deserved better. "They were people I knew in Kansas. After my brother died, I was not thinking straight. I fell in with them for a while, did not realize what they were until it was too late." "Were you part of the bank robbery they mentioned?" "I was there, but I did not know that was the plan. When I realized what they intended, I tried to stop it. A man got shot. I ran, been running since." Olivia was quiet for so long that Marcus's chest began to ache. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady but distant. "Did you kill anyone?" No, I swear to you I never fired my gun. But you were there, you were part of it. Yes. The admission cost him, but it was the truth. I was there, and I have been trying to atone for it ever since. They rode the rest of the way in silence. When they reached the ranch, Olivia went directly into the house without a word. Marcus unhitched the wagon and tended the horses, his movements mechanical while his mind raced. He had ruined everything. She would tell him to leave, and he would have no choice but to go. He was in the barn when she found him an hour later. She stood in the doorway, backlit by the afternoon sun, her expression unreadable. My father used to say that a person is not defined by their worst moment, but by what they do after, she said quietly. Thomas believed that too. He always said people deserved second chances. Marcus hardly dared to breathe. Olivia, I am sorry. I should have told you from the beginning. Yes, you should have, but I understand why you did not. She stepped into the barn, moving closer. Those men will come back, will they not? Probably. And the law might come looking for you too. Yes. She stood directly in front of him now, so close he could see the flecks of gold in her dark eyes. Then we had better be ready. The "we" in that sentence filled him with something that felt dangerously like hope. You are not sending me away. You think I am that foolish. You are the best help I have had since Thomas died. More than that, you are honest about your mistakes. That counts for something. She paused, then added softly, You make me feel safe. That counts for even more. Marcus wanted to reach for her, to pull her close and promise he would never let anything harm her. But he held himself back, knowing he had no right to make such promises. I will do everything I can to protect you and this ranch. I know you will. She held his gaze a moment longer, then turned and walked out, leaving him standing in the barn with his heart pounding. That night, Marcus did not sleep. He sat in the bunkhouse cleaning his gun, a weapon he had sworn not to use but now knew he might have to. The choice was stark: use violence to protect what mattered, or hold to his vow and risk losing everything. It was not really a choice at all. Morning brought hard work and the routine of ranch life, but everything felt different now. Olivia knew the truth about him, and she had chosen to let him stay. That meant something, though Marcus was afraid to examine too closely what it meant. They were eating dinner that evening, a simple meal of stew and bread that Olivia had prepared, when she spoke about her own past. I was not always a widow living alone, she began. I grew up in Santa Fe in a large family. I have 4 sisters and 3 brothers. My father ran a successful freight business. I was educated, read classics, studied music. I could have married well, stayed in society. But I fell in love with a cowboy who made me laugh and showed me what freedom felt like. Marcus listened, honored that she was sharing this with him. When Thomas brought me here, my family was horrified. They could not understand why I would choose this hard life over comfort and security. But I never regretted it, not for a moment. Thomas gave me something my family's money could never buy. He gave me purpose and partnership. We built this ranch together from nothing. He was a lucky man, Marcus said quietly. I was lucky too. And then he was gone, and I had to decide who I was without him. At first I thought about selling, going back to Santa Fe, but I realized that would be betraying everything we built together. So I stayed and I fought, and I learned I was stronger than I knew. She looked directly at him. I am telling you this because I want you to understand. I do not give up on things that matter to me. I do not run from fights. And I do not judge people by their pasts when they are trying to build better futures. The message was clear. She was telling him she saw him, knew him, and was choosing to stand with him. The weight of that gift was almost too much to bear. I will not let you down, he said, his voice rough with emotion. I know. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibilities neither was quite ready to name. Then Olivia rose and began clearing the dishes, and the spell broke. But something had fundamentally shifted between them. Over the next 2 weeks, they fell into a deeper rhythm. Marcus found himself inventing reasons to be near the house, to catch glimpses of her through the window or hear her voice calling to the chickens. She began bringing him coffee in the mornings, staying to talk for a few minutes before starting her own work. They were dancing around something neither wanted to speak aloud, afraid of breaking the fragile understanding they had built. Then Granger returned. This time he brought 6 men, and they came at night. Marcus woke to the sound of horses and emerged from the bunkhouse to see fire illuminating the darkness. The hay barn was burning, flames leaping into the night sky. He ran toward the house, knowing this was the distraction, that the real danger was elsewhere. Olivia met him on the porch, a rifle in her hands. "They are trying to stampede the cattle," she said, her face lit orange by the fire. "I heard shots from the north pasture." Marcus made a split-second decision. "Stay here, bar the door. If anyone tries to enter, shoot first and ask questions later." "What are you going to do?" "Stop them." He ran to the corral, caught Rusty, and threw a bridle on him. There was no time for a saddle. He swung onto the horse's back and rode hard toward the sound of gunfire, his own weapon drawn. The night was chaos, cattle running in panic, men shouting, guns firing. Marcus spotted 2 of Granger's men trying to drive the herd toward a break in the fence. He fired a shot over their heads, and they wheeled their horses to face him. "Get off this land," Marcus shouted. One of them laughed and raised his gun. Marcus shot him, a clean hit to the shoulder that knocked him from his saddle. The other man fired back, and Marcus felt the bullet pass close enough to feel its heat. He returned fire, and this man also went down. He worked through the darkness, using speed and surprise to drive off Granger's men one by one. He did not kill anyone, but he put enough lead close enough to make them think twice about staying. By the time dawn began to gray the sky, the attackers had fled and the cattle had calmed, though the hay barn was a total loss. Marcus rode back to the house to find Olivia standing on the porch, still holding her rifle. She lowered it when she saw him, relief flooding her face. "Are you hurt?" "No, they are gone." She came down the steps and he dismounted, and then somehow they were embracing, her arms tight around him, his face buried in her hair. They stood like that for a long moment, 2 people who had faced violence and survived, drawing comfort from each other's presence. "Thank you," she whispered. "Always," he replied, and meant it with every fiber of his being. They spent the day dealing with the aftermath, assessing damage, checking on cattle, and making repairs. The sheriff came out in the afternoon, summoned by a neighbor who had seen the fire. He listened to their account with a carefully neutral expression. "Any idea who might have done this?" he asked. Olivia met his eyes steadily. "Your brother-in-law has been pressuring me to sell. He made threats." The sheriff's jaw tightened. "That is a serious accusation, Mrs. Ortega." "It is the truth." He looked from her to Marcus, then back again. "I will look into it, but I suggest you both be careful. Granger has friends in this territory." After he left, Marcus and Olivia stood in the yard, watching the sun set over the remains of the barn. "He will not do anything," Olivia said bitterly. "Family is family." "Then we protect ourselves," Marcus replied, "and we do not give him another chance." That night they sat on the porch long after dark, both too keyed up to sleep. Olivia had brought out a bottle of whiskey that she said Thomas kept for special occasions, and they passed it back and forth, taking small sips that burned pleasantly. "What will you do if those men from Kansas come back?" Olivia asked. "I do not know. Running has not worked. Maybe it is time to stop running and face what I did." "You could turn yourself in, explain what really happened." "I could, but I am not sure it would matter. The law wants someone to blame, and I was there. That might be enough to hang me." She was quiet, then said, "Or you could stay here. Build a life. Let the past fade. Is that what you want?" Olivia turned to look at him, her eyes reflecting starlight. "Yes, it is what I want." The admission hung in the air between them. Marcus set down the whiskey bottle and turned to face her fully. "Olivia, I care for you. More than I have any right to, but I cannot offer you anything. I am a wanted man with no future." "You are a good man trying to be better," she countered. "That is all anyone can be, and as for the future, we all make our own." She reached out and took his hand, her fingers warm and steady. Marcus felt something crack open inside his chest, all the walls he had built around his heart crumbling in the face of her courage and her certainty. "I do not want to hurt you," he said softly. "Then do not push me away." He leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull back, but she met him halfway. Their kiss was gentle at first, tentative, then deepened into something that spoke of need and longing and promises neither could quite voice. When they finally pulled apart, Marcus rested his forehead against hers, breathing in the scent of her hair, feeling more at peace than he had in months. "We should probably talk about this," he murmured. "Or we could just live it," she replied. They sat together until late, talking quietly about hopes and fears, about the past and the possible future. Marcus told her about his childhood in Missouri, about his brother who had been his best friend, about the ranch where he had learned to work cattle and ride horses. Olivia talked about Santa Fe and her large family, about learning to run a ranch, about the loneliness of widowhood and her determination not to let it defeat her. As the night deepened, Marcus walked her to her door. "I will see you in the morning," he said. "Marcus," she said, her hand on his arm. "Thank you for tonight, for staying, for everything." He kissed her forehead gently. "There is nowhere else I would rather be." In the days that followed, they grew closer in ways both large and small. Marcus found himself whistling while he worked, caught himself looking toward the house more often than necessary. Olivia smiled more, laughed more freely. They took meals together regularly now, and in the evenings they would sit on the porch and plan for the ranch's future, as if it were a given that Marcus would be there to see those plans through. 3 weeks of peace passed before trouble returned, but this time from an unexpected quarter. Marcus was working on the new hay barn when a rider approached from town. It was the shopkeeper's son, a boy of maybe 16, riding hard. "Mr. Quinn," he gasped, reining in. "There are U.S. Marshals in town asking about you. They have a warrant." Marcus felt his stomach drop. This was what he had been dreading. "How many?" "2 that I saw. They were showing your picture around, asking if anyone knew where you were." "Did they mention me to the sheriff?" "I do not know, sir. I heard them asking at the saloon and rode straight out here." Marcus pressed a coin into the boy's hand. "Thank you. Now forget you came here." The boy nodded and rode off. Marcus stood frozen for a moment, his mind racing. He could run again, take Rusty and head for the mountains. But that would leave Olivia unprotected, and he knew Granger would move against her the moment Marcus was gone. He could stay and face arrest, which likely meant hanging. Or he could fight, but that would only prove he was guilty of something worth fighting over. He walked to the house where Olivia was kneading bread dough. She looked up, saw his face, and went still. "What happened?" "There are marshals in town looking for me. Someone must have recognized me from the wanted poster." The color drained from her face. "What will you do?" "I do not know. If I run, they will come after me. If I stay, they will arrest me. Either way, this ends badly." Olivia wiped flour from her hands and came around the table. "Then we face them together. We tell them the truth, that you were not part of the robbery, that you tried to stop it. It might not matter." "It has to matter. You are not a criminal, Marcus. You made a mistake, but you are not a bad man." He wanted to believe her, wanted to think truth and justice would prevail. But he had seen too much of the world to be that naive. Still, running would mean losing her, and that was no longer an option he could bear to contemplate. "If they arrest me, you need to promise me something," he said. "Marcus, do not. Promise me you will be careful. Granger will see me being taken as an opportunity. You need to be ready to defend this place. I am not worried about Granger. I am worried about you." He took her hands in his, feeling how small and strong they were. "I love you, Olivia. I should have said it sooner. I should have said it the first moment I felt it. But I love you, and whatever happens next, I need you to know that." Tears shone in her eyes. "I love you too, which is why we are going to fight this. You are not going to prison, and you are certainly not going to hang." Before he could respond, they heard horses. Through the window, Marcus saw 2 riders approaching, both wearing badges. His time had run out. "Go to the bunkhouse," Olivia said urgently. "Let me talk to them first." "Olivia, I cannot hide behind you. You are not hiding. You are giving me a chance to help you. Please, Marcus, trust me." Against his better judgment, he slipped out the back door and made his way to the bunkhouse. From there, he could see the front of the house but would be hidden from casual view. He watched as Olivia stepped onto the porch to greet the marshals. They were both solid-looking men in their 40s, the type who had seen hard service and did their jobs without unnecessary drama. The lead marshal touched his hat to Olivia. "Mrs. Ortega, I am Marshal James Whitfield. This is Marshal Robert Howard. We are looking for a man named Marcus Quinn. We have information he may be working for you." "He is," Olivia said calmly. "May I ask why you are looking for him?" "He is wanted for bank robbery in Kansas. There is a warrant for his arrest." "I see. And what evidence do you have that he participated in this robbery?" Whitfield seemed taken aback by her directness. "He was identified as being present during the crime." "Present or participating? Madam, I appreciate your concern, but this is not really your business. We need to speak with Marcus Quinn." "Everything that happens on this ranch is my business, Marshal. Marcus works for me. He has been here for nearly 2 months, and in that time he has been nothing but honest and hardworking. If you are going to arrest him, I want to know the specific charges." Marshal Howard spoke up for the first time. "Mrs. Ortega, we understand your loyalty to your employee, but the law is the law. Marcus Quinn was identified as part of a gang that robbed the bank in Dodge City. A man was shot during that robbery. We have witnesses who place Quinn at the scene." "Do you have witnesses who say he fired a weapon? Who say he participated in planning the crime? Or do you just have witnesses who say he was there?" The marshals exchanged a glance. Whitfield said, "We have statements from the other gang members that Quinn was part of the operation." "Statements from criminals trying to reduce their own sentences by offering up another name," Olivia said sharply. "That hardly seems like reliable evidence." "That is for a judge to decide," Whitfield replied, his patience clearly wearing thin. "Now, we can do this the easy way or the hard way, but either way we are taking Marcus Quinn back to Kansas to stand trial." Marcus had heard enough. He stepped out of the bunkhouse, hands visible and away from his gun. "I am here, Marshal." Both marshals turned, hands dropping to their weapons but not drawing. Olivia looked at Marcus with something between frustration and fear. "Marcus Quinn?" Whitfield asked. "Yes, sir." "I am placing you under arrest for bank robbery and attempted murder. You need to come with us." "Before you take him, I want you to hear the full story," Olivia interjected. "Marcus, tell them what really happened." Marcus walked slowly toward the house, keeping his movements non-threatening. When he reached the porch, he looked the marshals in the eye. "I was in Dodge City with men I thought were friends. They invited me for what they said would be a simple job driving cattle. I did not know about the bank until the morning it happened. When I realized what they planned, I told them I wanted no part of it. They said it was too late, that I was in whether I liked it or not. He paused, remembering that awful day. I went into the bank with them because they had guns on me. When the shooting started, I tried to grab the weapon from the man who shot the clerk. That is when I realized there was no reasoning with these people, so I ran. I took my horse and I rode west, and I have been running ever since. "Do you have any proof of this story?" Howard asked, not unkindly. "No, sir, just my word." "The problem is, we have 3 other members of that gang who tell a different story," Whitfield said. "They say you were part of the planning, that you were supposed to watch the back exit. They are lying to save themselves." "Maybe so. But without evidence to the contrary, a judge will have to sort it out." Whitfield gestured to his saddle. "I am going to ask you to hand over your weapon and come peacefully." Marcus slowly unbuckled his gun belt and handed it to the marshal. As he did, Olivia stepped forward. "How long will he be held before trial?" "There is a circuit judge due in Dodge City in about 6 weeks. He will be held until then." 6 weeks, Olivia repeated. "And then what? If he is found guilty," Whitfield's expression softened slightly. "If he is found guilty of participating in a robbery where someone died, the sentence would be hanging." The words fell like stones. Olivia swayed slightly and Marcus reached for her, but the marshals moved between them. "Do not make this harder than it has to be," Howard said quietly. "I need a moment with her," Marcus said. "Please." The marshals looked at each other, then Whitfield nodded. "1 moment." Marcus moved to Olivia, taking her hands. "Listen to me. You need to keep this ranch going. Do not let Granger intimidate you. There is money in my bunk, about $80. Use it for anything you need, and get help. Hire someone you can trust." "I do not care about the ranch," Olivia said fiercely, tears streaming down her face. "I care about you. I know. I care about you too, but we have to be practical now. I am going to fight this. I am going to find a lawyer, get character witnesses, do whatever it takes." "Olivia, you cannot afford a lawyer." "I will sell cattle if I have to. I am not giving up on you, Marcus Quinn. You do not get to tell me to move on and forget you. I will be there for that trial, and I will bring half of Wyoming territory with me if I have to." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight, memorizing the feel of her against him. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you too. This is not over." "Time to go," Whitfield said, not unkindly. Marcus released Olivia and allowed the marshals to bind his hands. They lifted him onto one of their horses, and as they rode away, he looked back to see her standing in the yard, straight and strong despite the tears on her face. The image burned into his memory, sustaining him through what lay ahead. The ride back to town was silent. The marshals seemed like decent men simply doing their job, but that did not make the situation any less dire. They locked Marcus in the small jail attached to the sheriff's office, a single cell with a narrow cot and a bucket. The sheriff, Granger's brother-in-law, looked at Marcus with an expression that might have been satisfaction. "Looks like your luck ran out," he said. Marcus did not bother to respond. He sat on the cot and stared at the wall, his mind racing through possibilities and finding none that offered much hope. Even if he could prove he had not participated willingly, he had still been present. That might be enough for a guilty verdict. 2 days passed in monotonous sameness. The sheriff brought food twice a day, thin stew and hard bread. The marshals came by to ask follow-up questions about the robbery, looking for details that might corroborate or contradict the story told by the other gang members. Marcus answered honestly, though he knew it probably would not matter. On the 3rd day, he had a visitor. Olivia arrived with a basket of food and a look of determination that would have made him smile under other circumstances. "I brought you something decent to eat," she said, passing the basket through the bars. "And I have news." "What kind of news?" "I found a lawyer in Cheyenne who is willing to take your case. His name is Patrick Morrison, and he specializes in criminal defense. He is expensive, but I sold 30 head of cattle to cover his fee." "Olivia, no, you need those cattle. I need you more. Morrison is going to travel to Dodge City for the trial. He wants to interview you first, so he is coming here next week." Marcus felt hope flicker to life despite his best efforts to suppress it. "What can a lawyer really do? I was there. That is not in dispute. But your intent matters. Morrison says if he can establish you were coerced and tried to prevent the crime, that changes everything. You could be looking at a lighter sentence, maybe even acquittal, or I could still hang." "Stop that," she said sharply. "Stop giving up before we have even fought. You are not a quitter, Marcus Quinn. You stood up to Granger's men. You protected this ranch. You can stand up in court and tell the truth about what happened." He moved closer to the bars, as close as he could get to her. "I am afraid, not of dying, but of never seeing you again. Then fight. Fight for us, for the life we could have together." Before he could respond, the sheriff appeared. "Time is up, Mrs. Ortega." She ignored him, keeping her eyes on Marcus. "I will be back tomorrow, and the day after that, and every day until they take you to Kansas." True to her word, she visited daily, bringing food and news and her unwavering support. The lawyer arrived as promised, a thin man with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind. He interviewed Marcus for 3 hours, taking detailed notes about everything that happened in Dodge City. "Your story is consistent, which is good," Morrison said when he was done. "And the fact that you fled rather than taking your share of the money supports your claim of unwilling participation. But I will be honest with you, Mr. Quinn. This will not be an easy case to win. The fact that you did not report the crime to authorities, that you fled the state, these things work against you." "What are his chances?" Olivia asked. She had insisted on being present for the interview. Morrison hesitated. "In a fair trial with an unbiased jury, maybe 50-50. But there are no guarantees. The prosecution will argue that flight shows consciousness of guilt. They will paint you as an outlaw who got cold feet after the fact, but was still complicit in the planning. What can we do to strengthen his case? Character witnesses. People who can testify to his good character, his honest work, his attempts to live lawfully since leaving Kansas. You would be one such witness, Mrs. Ortega. Are there others who would speak for him?" Olivia thought for a moment. "The blacksmith who recommended him to me. Some of the neighboring ranchers have seen the work he has done. Even the sheriff, though I doubt he would help given his relationship with Granger. Anyone else in his past? Family? Former employers?" Marcus shook his head. "My family is all gone. As for employers, I moved around a lot after my brother died. There is no one who knew me well enough to vouch for me." Morrison made a note. "Then we work with what we have. Mrs. Ortega, I will need you to gather those character witnesses and be prepared to travel to Dodge City for the trial. Mr. Quinn, I will file motions arguing for the distinction between presence at a crime and active participation. It is not much, but it is what we have." After Morrison left, Olivia stayed as long as the sheriff would allow. "We are going to win this," she said, her hand reaching through the bars to touch his. "I believe that with everything in me. I wish I had your faith. Then borrow mine until you find your own." The weeks crawled by with agonizing slowness. Olivia visited every day, sometimes bringing news about the ranch, other times just sitting in silence, her presence a comfort beyond words. Morrison sent updates via telegram, outlining his trial strategy and requesting additional information. Then, 4 days before they were scheduled to leave for Kansas, something unexpected happened. Jack Moreland appeared at the jail. The man who had confronted Marcus in the street 2 months earlier looked different now, thinner and harder with a hunted quality in his eyes. The sheriff showed him to Marcus's cell with obvious reluctance. "You have 5 minutes," the lawman said. Moreland waited until the sheriff was out of earshot, then moved close to the bars. "I hear you are headed for trial. What do you want, Jack, to make you an offer?" "You keep your mouth shut about our operation. Do not name names or give details, and I will make sure you walk out of that courtroom free." Marcus stared at him. "How exactly would you do that?" "I have connections in Dodge City. Jury tampering is not as hard as you might think. 1 or 2 holdouts and you get a mistrial. Then we make the evidence disappear before any retrial. You want me to protect the men who got me into this mess. I want us to protect each other. You give testimony, you go down, but maybe you take some of us with you. You stay quiet, everybody wins. Except the bank clerk who got shot. Except the law. Except justice." Moreland's expression hardened. "Justice is what you can buy or steal, same as anything else. You really think the truth will set you free? That some judge and jury will listen to your sob story and let you walk? You are a fool, Quinn." "Maybe I am, but I am done lying, done running. If I go down, it will be for something I actually did, not for staying silent about murder. You are making a mistake. It would not be my first. Now get out of here." Moreland stared at him for a long moment, then turned and left. Marcus sat on his cot, his heart pounding. Part of him wondered if he should have listened, should have taken the offer of a mistrial. But he knew Olivia would never respect him if he took the coward's way out. More than that, he would never respect himself. He told Olivia about Moreland's visit when she came that afternoon. Her reaction was immediate and fierce. "You did the right thing. Whatever happens in that courtroom, you will have told the truth. That matters more than the verdict." Easy to say when you are not facing the noose. No, it is not easy to say. It is the hardest thing in the world, but it is right, and you know it. She was correct, though that did not make it any less terrifying. The night before they were scheduled to leave for Kansas, Marcus lay awake on his cot, thinking about paths not taken and choices that had led him to this moment. If he had not fallen in with the gang after his brother died, if he had reported the robbery to authorities immediately, if he had never come to Wyoming. So many ifs, and none of them mattered now. What mattered was Olivia, and the life they might still have if fortune smiled on them. He allowed himself to imagine it. Mornings waking up beside her, building the ranch together, maybe children eventually. The images hurt to contemplate because they felt so impossible, but he could not stop himself from hoping. The journey to Dodge City took 6 days by train from Cheyenne. Marcus made the trip in shackles, accompanied by Marshal Whitfield, Morrison the lawyer, and Olivia. She sat beside him whenever the marshals allowed, talking quietly about nothing and everything, her presence an anchor in the chaos of his thoughts. Dodge City was bigger than Fort Bridger, more established and civilized, but still carrying the rough edge of the frontier. They arrived 3 days before the trial, which Morrison said was a good thing as it gave him time for final preparations. Marcus was locked in a cell in the local jail, better appointed than the one in Fort Bridger, but no less confining. Morrison visited twice a day with updates and questions. The prosecution's case was straightforward. 3 members of the gang had testified in exchange for reduced sentences, all claiming Marcus was a willing participant. The defense would argue coercion and attempt to establish his good character, but Morrison admitted privately that it would be an uphill battle. The night before the trial, Olivia came for what might be their last private conversation. The jailer allowed her 30 minutes, a kindness for which Marcus was grateful. "Are you ready?" she asked, taking his hand through the bars. "As ready as I will ever be. Morrison thinks I should testify in my own defense, tell the jury what really happened. Will you?" "Yes." "Even if it does not help, I need to say it out loud, to own what I did and did not do." "I will be in that courtroom," Olivia said fiercely. "Whatever happens, you will not be alone. I need you to promise me something. If this goes badly, if they find me guilty, I need you to go home and live your life. Do not waste years mourning me or visiting my grave. Find someone good and build the life you deserve. Stop talking like that. Olivia, please. I need to know you will be all right." She was crying now, tears streaming down her face. "How can I be all right without you? You are the first person since Thomas died who made me feel alive again. You are patient and kind and honest, and I love you more than I thought possible. So no, I will not promise to forget you and move on. I will fight for you until there is nothing left to fight for, and if the worst happens, then I will carry you in my heart for the rest of my life." Marcus pulled her as close as the bars would allow, pressing his forehead against hers. "I love you. Whatever happens tomorrow, remember that I love you with everything I am." They stayed like that until the jailer came to tell Olivia her time was up. She kissed him through the bars, a kiss that tasted of salt and promises, then forced herself to leave. Marcus watched her go, imprinting the image in his memory against the long night ahead. Morning came too soon and too slowly all at once. They brought him breakfast that he could not eat, then shackles for the walk to the courthouse. A crowd had gathered outside, curious townspeople come to see the spectacle of a trial. Marcus kept his head up, refusing to show fear even as his stomach churned. The courtroom was a solid structure with wooden benches and a raised platform for the judge. Morrison met him at the defense table, laying out papers with practiced efficiency. "Remember what we discussed. Answer questions honestly, but do not volunteer extra information. Let me handle the legal arguments." The prosecution table held 2 lawyers, both looking confident and well prepared. Marcus recognized that confidence as the assurance of a strong case. His own lawyer, skilled as he was, could only do so much with the facts at hand. The jury filed in, 12 men who would decide his fate. Marcus studied their faces, trying to gauge what they might be thinking, but saw only the careful neutrality of strangers asked to pass judgment. The judge entered, and everyone rose. Judge Harlan Crow was an older man with white hair and a stern expression that suggested he had seen every type of criminal and lie the frontier could produce. He called the court to order, and the trial began. The prosecution went first, laying out their case with methodical precision. They called the bank manager who had been present during the robbery, who testified to seeing 5 men enter the bank with guns drawn. He identified Marcus from among them, though admitted he could not say for certain which man had fired the shot that wounded the clerk. Next came the 3 gang members who had testified against Marcus. Each told the same story. Marcus had been part of planning the robbery, had known what they intended, and had participated willingly. Under Morrison's cross-examination, inconsistencies emerged in their stories, small details that did not quite match. But the core of their testimony remained intact. Marcus had been there. The clerk who had been shot testified next, his testimony devastating in its simplicity. He had been shot during the robbery and had nearly died. Someone needed to pay for that crime. The implication was clear. If not the actual shooter, then anyone present would do. When the prosecution rested, Morrison called his witnesses. The blacksmith from Fort Bridger testified to Marcus's character, describing him as honest and hardworking. The neighboring ranchers told similar stories. Olivia took the stand and spoke eloquently about Marcus's dedication, his protection of her ranch, his obvious remorse for his past mistakes. Then it was Marcus's turn. He took the stand with his heart hammering, acutely aware of every eye in the courtroom on him. Morrison led him through his story, starting with his brother's death and the grief that had made him vulnerable to bad influences. He described meeting the gang, believing they were offering legitimate work. He told the court about learning of the robbery plan the morning it happened, about trying to back out and being threatened. "What went through your mind when you realized what was happening?" Morrison asked. "Terror," Marcus answered honestly. "I knew it was wrong, I knew someone could get hurt, but I also knew if I tried to leave they would kill me, so I went along thinking I could find a way to stop it." "Did you try to stop it?" "Yes. When I saw the man pull his gun on the clerk, I tried to grab it. That is when the shooting started. As soon as I could, I ran. I took my horse and I rode away from that life as fast as I could." Under cross-examination, the prosecutor hammered at his decision to flee rather than report the crime. "If you were truly innocent, why not go to the authorities?" "Because I was scared. Because I thought no one would believe me. Because I knew I had made terrible choices and I was not sure I deserved to be believed." "So you are asking this jury to believe you now, when you admit you have been lying by omission for months?" "I am asking them to look at what I did after that day. I worked honest jobs, lived quietly, tried to be a better man. That should count for something. What it counts for is up to the jury. No further questions." Morrison did his best in closing arguments, emphasizing the difference between presence and participation, between bad judgment and criminal intent. But the prosecution's closing was powerful, painting Marcus as an outlaw who got cold feet but remained complicit in a violent crime. The jury retired to deliberate. Marcus was taken back to his cell to wait. Olivia and Morrison came to sit with him, though none of them had much to say. The waiting was agony, each minute stretching into eternity. 4 hours later, word came that the jury had reached a verdict. Marcus was brought back to the courtroom, his hands shaking despite his best efforts to remain calm. Olivia sat in the front row, her eyes locked on his, silently willing him strength. The foreman stood when the judge asked for the verdict. "In the case of the Territory of Kansas versus Marcus Quinn on the charge of bank robbery, we find the defendant guilty." The words hit like a physical blow. Olivia made a sound, half cry and half gasp. Morrison's expression went carefully blank, but the foreman was not finished. "However, the jury recommends leniency given the evidence of coercion and the defendant's subsequent attempts to live lawfully." Judge Crow looked over the courtroom, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Quinn, please stand." Marcus rose on unsteady legs. This was it, the moment when his fate would be decided. "You have been found guilty of participating in a bank robbery where a man was seriously injured. That is a serious crime that normally carries severe penalties. However, this jury has recommended leniency, and I am inclined to agree with their assessment. You showed poor judgment in associating with criminals, but the evidence suggests you were coerced into participation and did not fire the weapon that caused injury." He paused, and Marcus held his breath. "I hereby sentence you to 5 years in the territorial prison, with the possibility of early release for good behavior. You will serve this sentence beginning immediately. 5 years. Not a death sentence, not even close. But 5 years away from Olivia, from the ranch, from the life they had just begun to build." Marcus felt the weight of it settle on his shoulders even as relief flooded through him that at least he would live. Morrison was already speaking, asking for an appeal bond, arguing that Marcus was not a flight risk. But the judge denied it. Marcus would go directly to prison. They allowed him a few minutes with Olivia before taking him away. She clung to him, her whole body shaking with sobs. 5 years, she kept repeating. 5 years. It could have been worse. It could have been forever. I will wait for you. I swear I will wait. Olivia, that is too much to ask. You are young. You have your whole life ahead of you. She pulled back and looked at him fiercely. You do not get to decide this. I love you and I will be here when you get out. If they let you out early for good behavior, it could be less than 5 years. 3 or 4 maybe. I can wait that long. What about the ranch? I will manage. I will hire help. I will do whatever it takes. Just promise me you will survive in there. Promise me you will come back to me. I promise, he said, knowing he would move heaven and earth to keep that promise. They took him away then, back to his cell to prepare for transport to the territorial prison in Laramie. The last image he had was Olivia standing in the courtroom, tears streaming down her face but her back straight and her chin high. She was the strongest person he had ever known. The territorial prison in Laramie was a grim stone structure built to break men's spirits. Marcus arrived with 24 other convicts, all shackled together, all facing their own versions of purgatory. The guards processed them with mechanical efficiency, stripping them of personal possessions, issuing prison uniforms, assigning them to cells. Marcus found himself in a cell with 3 other men, one serving time for horse theft, another for assault, the third for murder. They were a rough lot, but Marcus had learned to navigate difficult people during his brief time with the gang. He kept to himself, did his work without complaint, and avoided trouble. The days blurred together in mind-numbing sameness. Wake at dawn, eat thin gruel, work in the prison quarry breaking rocks, eat again back to the cell. The work was back-breaking, designed to punish as much as occupy. Marcus threw himself into it, using the physical labor to exhaust his body so he could sleep at night without dreaming too much of what he had lost. Olivia wrote to him every week, long letters full of news about the ranch and encouragement to stay strong. She told him about hiring 2 ranch hands to help with the work, about expanding the cattle herd, about fighting off another attempt by Granger to buy her land. Her strength sustained him through the darkest moments. He wrote back when he could, though the prison allowed only 1 letter per month. He told her about life inside, carefully editing out the worst parts because he did not want her to worry. He told her he loved her, that he thought of her every day, that the hope of seeing her again was what kept him going. A year passed, then 2. Marcus earned a reputation as a model prisoner, someone who followed rules and stayed out of fights. The warden noticed, and when Marcus applied for work in the prison library, a position that came with slightly better conditions, he was granted the transfer. The library was a small room with perhaps 200 books, but to Marcus, it felt like freedom. He devoured everything he could find, novels and histories and books about farming and ranching. He taught himself basic law, thinking he might help other prisoners with their cases. It gave him purpose beyond survival. In his 3rd year, Morrison visited. The lawyer had been working on an appeal, arguing that the sentence was excessive given the circumstances. I have filed a petition for clemency with the governor, he explained. With your record of good behavior and the warden's recommendation, you have a real chance of early release. How much time are we talking about? If approved, you could be out within 6 months. That would make it 3.5 years total. The news ignited hope Marcus had tried not to feel. 3.5 years instead of 5. It was still too long, but it was better than the alternative. Olivia visited a month later, making the long journey from Fort Bridger. They sat in the visiting room with a table between them, not allowed to touch, but Marcus drank in the sight of her like a man dying of thirst. She looked tired but healthy, her dress plain but well made, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "You look good," she said, which was a generous lie. He knew he had lost weight, that prison had aged him beyond his 29 years. "So do you. Your letters said the ranch is doing well, better than well. We had a good calf crop this year and beef prices are up. I have been able to save money, build up a reserve. When you get out, we will have a solid foundation to build on." The when, not if, in that sentence filled him with warmth. She still believed in their future in him. "Morrison said he filed for clemency." "I know. I wrote letters supporting it, and so did half of Fort Bridger. Even the sheriff wrote one, though I suspect he did it just to spite Granger." "What happened with Granger?" Olivia's expression hardened. "He tried one more time to intimidate me into selling. I told him if he set foot on my land again, I would shoot him. He believed me. We have a truce of sorts now. He stays on his side of the property line and I stay on mine." They talked until the guard announced visiting time was over. Olivia stood reluctantly, her hand reaching across the table to hover near his without touching. "I love you," she said. "Stay strong. This is almost over." "I love you too. Thank you for waiting, for believing in me." "Always," she replied, then she was gone, leaving him alone with memories and hope. 3 months later, on a cold morning in late February, the warden called Marcus to his office. "Your petition for clemency has been approved. You are being released, effective immediately." Marcus stood frozen, unable to process the words. "Released? Today? Right now, in fact. Gather your things. Your friend Mrs. Ortega has been notified. She will meet you at the train station in Cheyenne tomorrow." The next few hours passed in a daze. They returned his personal belongings, gave him clothes and money for the train, and walked him out through the prison gates into freedom. Marcus stood on the street outside, breathing free air for the first time in 3.5 years, hardly able to believe it was real. The train journey to Cheyenne was surreal. He kept expecting guards to appear, to tell him it was all a mistake. But the hours passed without incident, and when the train pulled into Cheyenne Station the next afternoon, Marcus scanned the platform with his heart in his throat. He saw her immediately. Olivia stood near the station house, wearing a green dress he did not recognize, her hair pulled back in a way that highlighted her face. When she saw him step off the train, she ran. They met in the middle of the platform, and then she was in his arms, solid and real and crying. Marcus held her tight, burying his face in her hair, breathing in the scent of her. "You are here," she kept saying. "You are really here. I am here. I am free. And I am never leaving you again." They stood like that for a long time, oblivious to the curious stares of other passengers. Finally, Olivia pulled back enough to look at him, her hands framing his face. "Let's go home," she said. Home. The word had never sounded sweeter. They took a hotel room that night, the first real privacy they had enjoyed in nearly 4 years. Marcus sat on the edge of the bed, still hardly believing this was happening. Olivia knelt in front of him, taking his hands. "I waited," she said simply, "just like I promised. I never doubted you. Your letters were the only thing that kept me sane in there. It is over now. The past is behind us. We can finally start our life together." She was right. The past, with all its mistakes and pain, was behind them. Ahead lay only possibility. Marcus pulled her up and kissed her, a kiss that spoke of love and longing and promises finally able to be kept. They talked late into the night, filling in details letters could not capture. Olivia told him about the ranch, about the challenges and victories of the past 3 years. Marcus told her about prison life, about the books he had read and the men he had met, about the long hours working in the quarry and the longer hours lying awake at night thinking of her. "I want to marry you," he said as dawn began to lighten the sky. "As soon as possible, if you will have me." "Of course I will have you. I have been waiting for you to ask for 3.5 years. They married in Fort Bridger 2 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the small church on the edge of town. The blacksmith stood up as Marcus's best man, and one of Olivia's ranch hands gave her away since her family was too far to attend on short notice. It did not matter. What mattered was the moment when Marcus slipped a simple gold band onto Olivia's finger and heard her speak the words that bound them together. Life on the ranch settled into a new rhythm. Marcus threw himself into the work with renewed energy, grateful for the chance to build something lasting. The physical labor that had been punishment in prison became satisfaction now, each fence mended and each calf born a small victory. Olivia bloomed under his care and attention. The shadows that had lived in her eyes since Thomas's death gradually faded, replaced by laughter and joy. They worked side by side during the day and held each other close at night, making up for lost time. A year after his release, Olivia discovered she was pregnant. Marcus received the news with a mixture of joy and terror. He was going to be a father. The responsibility of it was overwhelming, but Olivia's calm confidence steadied him. "You will be a wonderful father," she assured him. "You are patient and kind and strong. Our child will be lucky to have you." Their son was born on a snowy January morning, a healthy baby boy with Olivia's dark hair and Marcus's blue eyes. They named him Thomas, after the man who had loved Olivia first and taught her about running a ranch. It felt right to honor that memory. Marcus held his son for the first time with shaking hands, awed by the fragility and perfection of the small life they had created. "I promise I will be better than my father," he whispered. "I promise I will give you the life I did not have." The baby squirmed and made a small sound, and something shifted in Marcus's chest. The past, with all its mistakes, did not seem quite as heavy anymore. He had been given a second chance, and he was determined not to waste it. 2 years later, they had a daughter. Amelia came into the world screaming her displeasure at being disturbed, and never quite stopped making her presence known. She was fierce and determined from the start, with her mother's strength and her father's stubbornness. The ranch prospered. With Marcus's labor and Olivia's business sense, they expanded their holdings and became one of the more successful operations in the region. Other ranchers came to them for advice, and gradually Marcus earned a reputation as a man who could be trusted, who knew his business and dealt fairly. Granger died 5 years after Marcus's release, a heart attack that struck him while he was riding his property. His widow sold the ranch to an Eastern syndicate, and the new owners had no interest in the territorial disputes that had marked Granger's tenure. The threat that had loomed over Olivia for so long simply evaporated. Thomas grew into a quiet, serious child who loved animals and working with his father in the barn. Amelia was his opposite, loud and energetic, and constantly getting into mischief. Marcus loved them both with a fierceness that sometimes scared him. He had not known it was possible to love so deeply until he held his children. One evening when Thomas was 7 and Amelia was 5, Marcus sat on the porch watching his children play in the yard. Olivia joined him, settling into the chair beside him with a contented sigh. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "How lucky I am, how easily this could have gone differently." "But it did not. You made good choices when it mattered. You fought for us for this life." Marcus took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "I found you ironing clothes quietly all those years ago, just a widow trying to keep her life together. I had no idea you would save me." "I think we saved each other," Olivia replied softly. "You gave me a reason to keep fighting for this ranch. I gave you a reason to believe you could be better than your mistakes." "I ironed out my wrinkled past," Marcus said with a slight smile. "With your help." She squeezed his hand. "We ironed it out together. That is what partners do." Thomas called out then, asking his father to come see something he had found in the barn. Marcus rose, kissed Olivia's forehead, and went to join his son. As he walked across the yard of the ranch he had helped build, with his daughter running circles around him and his wife watching from the porch, Marcus Quinn felt something he had not experienced in a very long time: peace. The past was behind him, fully and finally. The mistakes he had made, the time he had lost, even the pain of prison, all of it had led him here to this moment, this family, this life. He would not change any of it because changing it might mean losing what he had found. That night, after the children were asleep and he and Olivia lay in bed together, Marcus spoke the words that had been building in his heart. "Thank you for waiting for me, for believing in me when I did not believe in myself, for building this life with me." "There is nowhere else I would rather be," Olivia replied, her head on his chest, her hand over his heart. "And no one else I would rather be with." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, secure in the knowledge that whatever challenges tomorrow might bring, they would face them together. The cowboy who had arrived in Fort Bridger carrying a past too heavy to bear had found redemption in the quiet strength of a widow ironing clothes. Together they had built something lasting, something worth fighting for. Years continued to pass in the gentle rhythm of ranch life. Thomas grew tall and capable, learning everything Marcus could teach him about working cattle and fixing fences and treating the land with respect. Amelia never lost her fire, but learned to channel it into helping her mother with the business side of the ranch, proving to have a sharp mind for numbers and negotiations. When Marcus turned 45, Olivia gave him a gift, a leather-bound journal with blank pages. "I thought you might want to write down your story," she explained. "For the children, so they know where they came from." Marcus started writing that night, beginning with the day his brother died and ending with the present moment. It took him 3 months to fill the journal, writing in the evenings after work was done. When he finished, he gave it to Thomas to read first. His son returned it a week later, his eyes red as if he had been crying. "I did not know it was that hard, Pa. Life is hard sometimes. But it is also good. The important thing is to keep choosing good even when it is difficult." "Did you ever regret it? The choices you made?" Marcus thought about the question carefully. "I regret the robbery and the pain it caused. I regret the time I lost in prison. But I do not regret coming to Wyoming or meeting your mother or building this life. So no, in the end, I do not regret it, because it brought me to you and your sister and this ranch." Thomas nodded, understanding in a way only a child approaching adulthood could. "I want to be like you when I grow up." The words hit Marcus harder than he expected. "Be better than me. Learn from my mistakes instead of making your own. That is what I want for you." "I will try, Pa." More years passed. Thomas married a teacher from town, a smart young woman named Sarah who loved books and ideas, but also was not afraid of hard work. They built a house on the southern portion of the ranch and began raising their own family. Amelia married later, choosing a lawyer from Cheyenne who had the rare quality of being able to keep up with her in arguments. They settled in town but visited the ranch often. Marcus and Olivia found themselves entering the phase of life where grandchildren brought new energy and chaos. They welcomed it all, taking joy in watching their children become parents, in passing down the wisdom they had earned through hard experience. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Marcus took Olivia on a trip to Santa Fe to visit her family. It was the first time they had traveled together since their honeymoon, and being away from the ranch felt strange and wonderful. They stayed 2 weeks, and Olivia's family welcomed Marcus with warmth that surprised him. They had heard the whole story by now, but judged him on the man he had become rather than the mistakes of his youth. The trip home was leisurely, and they stopped at a hotel in Cheyenne for a night. As they lay in bed, Olivia turned to Marcus with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever think about what your life would have been like if you had never come to Fort Bridger? Sometimes. Usually when I am mucking out stalls in the freezing cold," he said with a laugh. "But honestly, I cannot imagine any other life. This is where I belong. With me." "With you," he confirmed, pulling her close. "Always with you. We have had a good life, Marcus Quinn. We have had a great life, and we are not done yet." They returned to the ranch to find Thomas had handled everything smoothly in their absence. The young man was ready to take over more responsibility, and Marcus was ready to let him. He was 52 years old now, and while he was still capable of a full day's work, he no longer felt the need to prove himself through constant labor. He and Olivia began to take more time for themselves, going on rides together like they had when they were courting, sitting on the porch in the evenings and talking about everything and nothing. They had earned this peace, and they savored every moment. One spring morning, Marcus woke to find Olivia already up and dressed, standing by the window looking out at the land they had built together. He joined her, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "What are you thinking about? How perfect this is. This moment, this life." "I was just thinking that if Thomas had not died, I would never have been alone on this ranch. And if I had not been alone, you would never have come to work for me. And if you had not come here, we would never have fallen in love. That is a lot of ifs, I know, but they all led here to us. I do not believe in fate exactly, but I believe we were meant to find each other." Marcus kissed the top of her head. "I believe that too. You saved me, Olivia. In every way a person can be saved." "We saved each other," she corrected, turning in his arms to face him. "That day you found me ironing clothes, I was just going through the motions of living. I had lost my purpose. You gave it back to me. By being a wanted man with a guilty conscience," she smiled. "By being a good man trying to do better. By showing me that love was possible again. By ironing out your wrinkled past and helping me smooth out my wrinkled present." They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the morning light, grateful for all the twists and turns that had brought them to this moment. Marcus Quinn lived to be 73 years old. He died peacefully in his sleep on a warm summer night, with Olivia beside him and his children nearby. His last words were to tell his wife he loved her, and that he would be waiting for her on the other side. The funeral was attended by half of Wyoming territory, it seemed. People came from as far as Cheyenne and beyond to pay their respects to the man who had arrived as a wanted criminal and left as a respected rancher and beloved father. The preacher spoke about redemption and second chances, about the power of love to transform even the most wrinkled past into something smooth and beautiful. Olivia lived another 12 years, running the ranch with Thomas and staying active in her grandchildren's lives. When she finally passed, also peacefully in her sleep, she was buried beside Marcus on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together. On her headstone, beneath her name and dates, Thomas had carved a simple phrase. She gave him a chance. He gave her a reason. Together they built a life. The ranch stayed in the family for generations, each one adding their own chapter to the story. But it all began with a cowboy who arrived carrying a past too heavy to bear, and a widow who was quietly ironing clothes when he found her. Together they ironed out all the wrinkles, smoothing the rough fabric of two damaged lives into something whole and beautiful. And in doing so, they proved that redemption is always possible for those brave enough to reach for it, and that love, when true and deep, can transform even the darkest past into the brightest future.